I should never have gone back to those woods. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to turn around the moment I stepped past the trail closed sign. But the unsolved mystery of the vanished hikers, their ghosts, they pulled me in. The air immediately grew colder, biting at my exposed skin, and the familiar scent of pine gave way to something else, something damp, earthy, almost like decay. The silence, it wasn't natural. It was a suffocating blanket pressing down on me, making my own breathing sound impossibly loud. I kept telling myself it was just the wind, just my imagination playing tricks. But deep down, I knew better. I knew I wasn't alone out there. Each step deeper into the woods felt like a transgression, a step further into a place that didn't want me. The narrow path, barely visible beneath a carpet of decaying leaves, seemed to twist and turn on its own accord, pulling me away from any semblance of civilization. The trees, ancient and gnarled, formed a canopy so dense that only slivers of weak gray light pierced through, casting long, dancing shadows that played tricks on my eyes. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of a branch sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I kept whipping my head around, convinced I'd catch a glimpse of something, someone, lurking just beyond my peripheral vision. But there was never anything there, just the silent, watchful forest. Then I saw it. Tucked into the roots of a massive oak, half buried in moss, was a faded, bright red bandana. It was a small detail, but it hit me like a punch to the gut. I remembered the news reports, the missing persons posters. One of the hikers, a young woman named Sarah, had been wearing a red bandana the day she vanished. My breath hitched. I knelt down, my fingers trembling as I reached for it. It felt cold, damp, and oddly stiff. There was a dark, almost black stain on one corner, and my mind immediately conjured images of dried blood. I quickly pulled my hand back, a wave of nausea washing over me. This wasn't just a lost item, it felt like a warning. The silence that followed was even more oppressive. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the stillness. I tried to convince myself it was just an old bandana, perhaps dropped by a different hiker, long before the disappearances. But the rational part of my brain was losing the battle against the primal fear clawing at my throat. And then I heard it. A faint, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled through the undergrowth, somewhere off to my left. It was slow, deliberate, and entirely too close for comfort. My blood ran cold. I froze, every muscle tensed, listening. It stopped. Then, much closer now, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper seemed to caress my ear, a sound that wasn't wind, a sound that was far too human, and it spoke my name. My lungs seized, air refusing to enter or leave. My own name, a sound usually so familiar, was twisted, elongated, a guttural rasp that seemed to vibrate not just in the air around me, but deep within my very bones. It wasn't a human voice, not really. It was something ancient, broken, like dry leaves scraping against stone. My eyes darted wildly, trying to pierce the gloom, but the dancing shadows seemed to multiply, shifting, coalescing into indistinct shapes at the very edges of my vision. The dragging sound started again, closer this time, accompanied by a wet, sickening squelch, like something heavy and decaying being pulled through mud. My heart hammered against my ribs, so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to flee, but my feet were rooted to the spot, encased in an invisible concrete. Then a flicker, a movement in the darkness between two gnarled oaks, barely 20 feet away. Not a shadow, not a trick of the light, something solid. It was hunched, impossibly tall even in its stoop, and moved with a jerky, unnatural gait. The air around it seemed to shimmer, distorting the shapes of the trees behind it, like looking through heat haze, but it was ice cold. A wave of the putrid decay scent washed over me, stronger now, overwhelming the pine, tasting like death and damp earth in the back of my throat. I could feel my stomach churn, bile rising. It slowly turned its head, if it even had a head in the conventional sense. The sliver of weak light caught something, reflecting back with a dull, vacant gleam. Not eyes, something else. A gaping, empty void where a face should be, dark and hollow, but I felt its gaze. A pressure that bore down on me, stripping away every layer of my composure. And then I saw what it was. A leg. A human leg, severed just below the knee, pale and mottled, with a hiking boot still attached. The red bandana, the one I had just found, was wrapped loosely around its ankle, almost like a grotesque keepsake. A choked scream tore itself from my throat, raw and desperate, but it was swallowed by the oppressive silence of the woods. The creature took another shuffling, dragging step towards me, its form growing clearer, more horrifying. It wasn't a ghost. It was something physical, something tangible and monstrous, woven from the very fabric of this cursed forest. Its skin was like bark, mottled with moss and what looked like dried blood, and long, spindly limbs ended in claws that scraped lightly against the undergrowth. The whisper came again, closer, directly in front of me now, a dry, rustling sound that filled my head. "You will stay," it hissed, and a cold skeletal hand, adorned with what looked like dried leaves and twigs, reached out, its long, sharp fingers brushing against my cheek, chilling me to the bone. The touch was like death itself, draining all warmth, all life from me. I was trapped. This was it. This was how they vanished. I don't know how I'm sitting here now telling you this. The next thing I remember was the blinding sunlight, the distant hum of traffic, and the taste of pine needles and fear in my mouth. My clothes were torn, my skin scraped raw, but I was out. I was free, or so I tell myself. But the woods, they followed me out, not physically, but within my very mind. I can still feel that cold touch on my cheek, the echo of that guttural whisper in the quietest moments of the night. You will stay. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise that it would never truly let me go. Every shadow seems to dance with unnatural life. Every rustle of leaves outside my window makes my heart jump. I see them sometimes in the periphery, those hollow, vacant eyes, the mottled bark-like skin. I went looking for answers, and I found something unspeakable, something that defies explanation, that lives in the forgotten corners of our world. And now I can't help but wonder, have you ever felt that lingering cold, that sense of being watched when no one is there? Have you ever heard your name whispered when you know you're alone? Because if you have, then maybe, just maybe, you're already part of its story too.